Recording. Okay, so and actually while I'm still recording, so similar to Maddie's interview, we'll kind of just shoot the shit for like the first part. And I've got some questions that a couple people sent to me on Instagram, and then I threw in sort of like a little rapid fire, kind of
Ooh.
like this or that thing. It's not like Pulitzer Prize winning, like but
Well,
it'll be fun.
gotta start somewhere.
Yes. So, okay, I'm gonna first kind of give my little introduction and then I'll have you sort of just talk about yourself and then we'll go from there.
Cool.
All right. Well, thank you, Laura, for joining me today on the second installment of Women in Wellness. Laura is how do you put it on your Instagram? I really liked it. It's like professional, amateur.
Oh, I'm gonna have to look it up right now. See.
I really liked it. It made me laugh. But
Yeah, professional enthusiast, amateur cyclist, enduring hustler.
that's perfect. We can just end the interview right there.
Pretty
What
much.
more is there really to say? Yeah, but thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it. Laura, tell me a little bit about yourself. Kind of give me your spiel, what it is that you do, a little bit of your backstory, whatever else you kind of want to throw in there, and then we'll just kind of jump off from there.
Sure. So, yeah, professional enthusiast, amateur cyclist.
I mean,
Well, no. So, I mean, professional title currently is National Events Manager with USA Cycling, which means I am at almost all of our national championships this year. Um, Started that in April, so it's a fairly new transition for me. My background professionally before that um, is a mixture of nonprofit work for a humane society in the events and communication realm. Before that, public recreation for county government. And before that, in high school, youth sport, just Parks and Rec kid, basically. So basically, kind of, yeah. When I say where I came up from, it's like, yeah, I'm a Parks and Rec kid. That's how it started, and then kind of progressed through different sports administration, public service, nonprofit, and now I'm here, which it all kind of intertwines. So it's kind of hard to say, like, this is what I do for work, this is what I do for play, because I also, as you know, play bikes for,
yep.
pleasure and leisure and competition and all that sort of stuff. And somehow find myself involved with cycling and athletic events, time on the clock, time off the clock. I mean,
hmm
yeah,
It's
lifestyle.
it's it's always definitely like comforting when I talk to other people who have sort of had this less than what's the word I'm looking for? Like their journey quite hasn't been as linear as you might imagine. Like they went to school for this thing and they did that thing. You know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
it's interesting when I talk to folks because I had a similar path where it's like, well, I went to school for this thing and then I graduated and did this thing and then that thing brought me to this thing and here I am now.
Well, one of the most important things I think I've learned is one, nobody's timeline is your timeline. Your timeline is not anybody else's timeline. And yeah, you never know where you're going to end up, because what I'm doing now, I never thought I'd be doing. I had a plan and it changed. And that was scary and terrifying. And I kind of really sad at the time. But where I am now is just fantastic. And every day, even when they're 4 a.m. wake up calls, um, or whatever happens, like it's just, yeah, it's all worked out. So that's one of the biggest things I tell people. Your timeline is your own timeline. Don't feel the pressure of anybody else's.
Right. And so I'd love to hear about so we've got like the professional Laura. Tell me about cycling and all things outdoors, Laura. And then, well, yeah, I'll just leave it at that. But yeah, tell me how did you get into cycling or just, sports and endurance things in general and
Yeah.
kind of your path along the way.
Yeah. So didn't really play organized sports as a kid. We ran around outside, rode bikes outside, uh, did pick up a lot of that sort of stuff. And then I got involved in soccer in high school. was kind of my introduction, both playing and then being a youth referee. Um, that, so outside doing that a lot, kind of realized one, somebody had to organize all this stuff, and it seemed like something I could do. Seemed pretty cool. And then that's actually how I got into cycling, racing, training, all that sort of stuff.
Mhm.
Because I got exposed at the rec department that I was at as a soccer referee in high school. A couple years later, I got involved with actually working events. So like bike races in North Carolina, Western North Carolina, and thought it was the coolest thing. I mean, seeing all these people whip around racing their bikes, especially doing cyclocross, um, was just kind of mind blowing. Well, this is really cool. I'm never going to do that, but it's cool to be here, be on the support side of it. It's events, love it, love organizing, sports administration, love all that. Um, and then I did have the opportunity when I went to finish my undergrad to be on the cycling team at Mars Hill College.
Mm.
And they just had this really open and welcoming, atmosphere. I went in saying, I just kind of want to do this. I don't want to race my bike. I would like to get better at riding my bike, and maybe next year I'll race. And then
Mhm.
within like a month, I'm at a race in Georgia doing my first race ever.
Yeah.
Not pretty terrified.
Yeah.
But once again, like it was an amazing supportive environment, with some friends that are still friends today,
Mhm.
and that kind of started it. And that's why, I mean, if anybody, regardless of your age, there's not an age cap for collegiate cycling. So if you go back to school, or once again you take a weird timeline to get to school, maybe see if there's a cycling team there, because it exposed me to a lot of different disciplines. It provided a lot of knowledge that I wouldn't have had access to otherwise, between
Mhm.
coaches and just friends, and getting involved in the local scene here in Western North Carolina. And that's kind of how I got pulled into it. And once I started, I haven't stopped, except for the COVID year.
Yeah. Yeah. And for anybody that's watching this and doesn't really know too much about like the colleges that have like a pretty big influence or have like these really strong programs, actually, before I go further with that, let me just say when I like interview my friends and subject them to these things. They're like my guinea pigs. I usually know, like, I'll ask them a question and be like, well, yeah, I mean, they're my friends. I kind of know like their general backstory at least. But I really didn't know that you got your start at Mars Hill. And then to connect sort of the first tangent I was making is that Mars Hill is like Brevard, like others, are these like cycling powerhouses. I mean,
Yeah,
they just churn out wonderful, wonderful athletes, really like well rounded. I mean, they could do road, they can do cyclocross, they can do mountain. Like they just get on a bike and they just win, pretty much.
and that's the really cool thing about collegiate cycling. I mean, I'm part of it. I'm super amped up on collegiate cycling. I just came off of collegiate track nationals. I'm like, oh, these kids, they're doing these awesome things. They're out here riding bikes and racing, and these collegiate programs are giving them these great opportunities, and it takes me back and gives me all the feels. Uh, but yeah, I mean, Marcel, yeah, they don't have a cycling program now, but them, Brevard College, App has a cycling club. You've got colleges in the Midwest. I mean, all over the U.S. And they're anywhere from like club teams that are self-athlete run all the way up to varsity sports. Um,
Right.
and it's not NCAA, but they'll still sometimes receive that funding from their university. But yeah, it gives you the opportunity. I mean, I did everything from mountain bike, cyclocross. I did BMX one season. And we went
Really?
yeah, we went to BMX nationals. I was
Oh
horrible
my
at
God.
it, but yeah, see, so I mean, like, I never would have had those opportunities
You're right.
outside of a collegiate program. And
Right.
so
Hmm.
I'm all about the collegiate program,
Yeah.
because it gave me all these opportunities and experiences in a pretty short period of time that I never would have had otherwise. And so I'm super grateful for that.
Hmm. That is super duper cool. So earlier you said that career wise, you sort of had this plan in your mind and you thought that your career, I'm kind of extrapolating at this point, but you know, you had this path in your mind, like, I think I'm going to go do this, and then maybe eventually one day I'll do this, and then everything will be figured out and be sunshine, daisies, glitter.
Yes,
Amazing.
yes.
And then what happens to all of us, we realize
Life
planning,
happens.
life happens, pandemics happen, things happen. But talk to me about, you know, any thoughts you have surrounding, and I talk about this a lot with my friends, sort of anecdotally, which is like trying to bring my two worlds together, which is here's my professional pursuits, here's my sort of breadwinner, so to speak, and then here are like all my passions and things that I spend my, you know, you see those TikToks are like my 5 to 9 after my 9 to 5. Like, here's what I do outside of work.
Yes.
Talk to me about what it's been like to bring those two worlds together.
Yeah. And I realize a lot of people, they don't have the opportunity to do that. So I'll preface I'll preface with that. Um, because yeah, I mean, my entire, I guess, career, I guess you can call it now, which is super weird because I don't feel like I have so much of a career. It's just what I do. But I guess my entire career, I've been able to be in places where I can do what I love and what I'm good at. And those are the same things that I'm going to fill my weekends with or my evenings with, which usually it's revolving around some sort of event, and more typically a bike race or a running race or something of that sort. So it's kind of, yeah, I mean, even when I started out, you know, I was working for county recreation and running a youth soccer program, but I was able to be involved with community events and put on, even had bike races there. And then moving to the Humane Society, once again, community events, fundraising events, and now even more
Right.
bike racing events. But at the same time, I would have my, my side hustles there that were working with local event companies as well. So it's also
Mhm.
been something where that's just, I enjoy that. And at some point, I kind of realized, I think the sports world, sports administration, especially endurance sports, are one that I'm comfortable in and I'm very knowledgeable at. Um, but it's more so the fact that this is something that's bringing people together, and it's
Mhm.
bringing people together in a way that I get excited about, clearly. Um,
Mhm.
but it's that community aspect. So whether it was seeing everybody come together on Saturday morning for their soccer games, or a group come together on a weeknight for a bike workout, or now, people coming together for a national event. It's still a community coming together, and that's really, I think, if you just get rid of all the other stuff and get rid of the vernacular, cyclocross or bike races or marathons or whatever, you get rid of all that. It's
Yeah.
and I'm excited about this. It's bringing all these people together,
The
and
hand motions are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. She's so excited.
but that really, like, that's the core of it. It's doing something that creates a fun experience and brings people together, and there is an energy to it, and that's why I've sought it out as the thing that I do on the side that I fill my time with, and that I've really been able to focus my professional um, development and growth towards as well.
Yeah. While you were talking, so many different questions popped up in my mind. I was like, oh, I want to ask her about this. Oh, I want to ask her about that. But I'm going to start here and then we'll just see where it goes, which
Yeah.
is that I feel like, um, you know, not that I'm some like old soul in the like larger community of cyclocross or even like really bike racing, but I feel like you're in a particularly unique position because not only are you in the races, you're in them, you're also help managing them, making sure that they're happening. So you're quite, I mean, you're literally on both sides of the tape.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's
Um,
always, yeah. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
no, 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 no. And so I kind of wanted to just shift slightly. Hopefully this is not too jarring, but as a woman in the sport, and also as someone who sees sports and organized sports from like on a national level too, I kind of wanted to pick your brain and discuss, any particular trends that you're seeing. Hopefully, they're good trends, of women and even, minority communities joining the world of sports, or perhaps some other things that you're seeing that I'm not particularly like asking, or really on my radar. I've just
Yeah.
always been curious to ask you, like, I wonder what Laura sees. I want to know what Laura's seeing from her perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is. Yeah, I love being in the background of it too. I think I almost enjoy that more so than the racing part. I love the racing part,
Mm,
and it gets out some of my competitive nature, and it almost sometimes it's meditative because when you're racing, you should really only just be racing, which my brain goes all over the place a lot of times. So that's really centering in a way. But
yeah.
yeah, I do. I love being in the background. I love the orchestration and yeah, looking and observing and seeing what's going on
Mhm.
at these events and everything that's going into it. Um, and I mean, like, I'm always, I'm always super amazed. Like when you just kind of step back from it and you look out into it, I'm always impressed with just, at least from what I've seen, the support and enthusiasm that people have. Um, and it may be the fact that we do have a really awesome scene here in North Carolina. I think it's very enthusiastic and everybody brings something different to it. And it's a very, I feel like it's a safe space. That doesn't mean that we don't have room to grow and things that we need to improve on,
Mhm.
100%. And diversity and inclusion is definitely one of those things. Um, but then, I mean, even like at the national level, you've got people who are really making the commitment to be there. So I think those are the people that are they're not always going to be able to be out there doing things, but these are the people who are really passionate about it as well because you're traveling, you're investing time and resources into being there, and to then just see their enthusiasm and support of their fellow competitors, especially women, is really nice, and really encouraging. Like it makes me really excited to go back to the grassroots level, and so to come back home or to encourage people wherever they are back home, well, what about this? What if we do this? Like, how can we start at the basic level and get more women riding bikes so that we can grow those fields at the national level?
Yes.
I
Right.
mean, that's very brief in like the last, what, 6 months, um, that I've seen, but it does, I want to see more being done locally. And that's where I have to balance my time and energy.
Right. Right. Right.
It's very hard.
Yes. And I think also too, for anybody that doesn't know too much about specifically like the cyclocross scene in the United States, obviously it's huge over in Europe, but in the United States specifically, there's kind of like pockets of the nation, I feel like, that do it really well. Obviously, New England is like, I mean, I feel like in the United States, it is like as close as you're going to get to like European racing conditions. They just have a
Right, it's
huge
like the
community
Mecca,
for it.
like, you go there, that's the destination.
Right, exactly. And then there's like North Carolina, and you're like, what? Like, it's a little bit like, we know it because we've been in it, we've been racing it. We're like, yeah, North Carolina's got a great scene, but when you really think about it, you're like, why? But it's people like you that are putting in truly like the blood, sweat, and tears behind the scenes. A lot of the time, you don't really see you. We don't see Tim. We don't like, they're just making sure it's happening. They're not in it to be like, look at me, I'm the queen. I'm of cyclocross. You know what I mean?
No,
But no, but that's yeah. And I think how cyclocross specifically, one draw that it's always had on me, um in like regards to like the other cycling disciplines, is that like, is that true camaraderie, is that true like brung what you brung sort of attitude, like show up If it's a, beater bike that's been hanging out in the shed for the past 10 years, bring it, race
Yeah,
it. And what's the worst that's going to happen? You're going to get some like beer hand ups, some dollar hand ups. It's going to be a great time.
it is. I mean, it really, I think it lends itself well just because it is one of those events where you do want to come and be there even if you're not racing. And
Right.
not every event is like that. Like, I mean, there's some things that happen. I'm like, I mean, why am I gonna go there? I'm not going with my friends, or I'm
Yeah.
tired, or whatever it is. But like cyclocross, you're like, no, there's an energy here, and like I want to be there even if I can't race. I may be sad that I can't race, but I'm gonna go.
Hmm.
I'm gonna be there because it is there. You can then be giving the beer hand ups, or whatever it is, or not insulting, but heckling friends, or not even
You're
friends.
right.
And you never know. I mean, I've met so many amazing, I mean, I like pretty much how I met you. Like, I've
Yeah.
met so many great people through it. And that's why, yeah, it is so, so awesome. But that's also where, like, I want it to keep being that place even more so for everybody. And so, I mean, yeah, I have a lot to learn to try to do that. And hopefully we'll succeed, or know the right people to ask and involve, and
Yeah.
keep
Yeah.
it growing. I mean, it's one of those things I think that evolves. So that's where it's good. It can change and grow and pivot. Whereas some other things I think get very stuck. And
Hmm.
cyclocross I don't think necessarily gets stuck because it is kind of the rogue child of cycling.
It is. It is. It is. It's a bit of the weirdo that you don't know really ever how to explain it to people who ask, like, what is cyclocross? And you're like, well, I've been doing cyclocross for I really don't know how many years at this point, and I still haven't gotten any better at explaining it to someone. Usually I just shove a YouTube video in their face. I'm like, watch that. That's kind of what it is.
Yep. I mean, you're riding your bike, then you're not riding your bike, then you're riding your bike again. It can be super, super muddy. It can be
Right.
snowy. It can,
You're
I
jumping over
mean,
things. People are like, oh, it's like CrossFit on bikes. And I'm like, I love you, but please don't ever say
no,
that again.
don't, no, no.
I love mm-mm. But I appreciate the effort.
You're trying, so thank you.
Really tried, yes, but unfortunately, it probably sucks a lot more than CrossFit at moments, at times.
I think so.
Um, I think, and I kind of want to shift one more time, but again, because I feel like you and I can just like riff and talk about cyclocross for hours and hours and hours. But also for people who don't know, Laura and I haven't always raced with Laura. I kind of worked my way up to your level because I was a newbie for a while. And let me just say this. I remember being, first time racer, maybe not my first race, but like definitely like my first year or two racing it was probably like definitely a little rusty because I didn't race really. I haven't really raced in a while. But women have a category 5, 4.
Now they do. I think when you were doing it was probably the four, and then the 3, 4.
I think you're right. Yeah.
Because the
Anyways,
five's still a relatively new category.
yeah.
Maybe
So
2, 3 years.
the
Maybe.
beginner categories, and even looking at like the intermediate women, and then of course like your cat 1 2s, which are sort of like the best, without crossing over into like the pro category, the pro threshold. I just remember looking at like you and others and just being like, I just don't know how they physically do that. Like they're so fast and so strong. And it's been really fun um to like some races I'm like really striving for like the points, and I'm really gritting my teeth, and I'm really out there trying to bleed out of my eyeballs and like really really do it and like be competitive, and and like that's fostered. But then there's also, and sometimes in the same race where you're like, I'm just out here having fun and I'm happy to be here, and like that's just as valid and celebrated in this space too. You know what I mean? Like, be competitive if you want to be competitive, but you don't have to be. Just have fun on a bike.
Exactly. No, I think that's kind of one of the, I've had like this conflict in myself kind of about that. because I came out of college and I was racing. I was racing really, really well. Um, and I was at like the top end of that field, and it was fantastic and it was great and exciting. And then just got busy, found myself, pulling myself in different directions,
Sure.
and I wasn't having those successes that I used to have. I just had some kind of couple miserable years of racing, but once again, I was still there because I love the community. So while
Hmm.
my races were not very enjoyable and I was not having fun training or anything like that, it's still being there was still so good. Um,
Hmm.
so like I've had that realization. It took me a lot longer than it took you to have that realization.
I'm still wrapping my arms around it too, because I'm like, I love one time I said to Max, my boyfriend, I was like, I'm not that competitive. And he actually bursted out laughing. And I'm like, oh, you're probably right. I'm extremely competitive. But yes, yeah, it's
Yeah,
a recent sort of revelation being like, wait a second. I sh bikes are like we rode bikes as kids because it was fun.
yeah. So I mean, sometimes for me, it's like and that's where like it's last year I found that joy in racing again because I kind of took some of that pressure off of myself. Like I'm here. I'm going to do the best that I can today. Like
Hmm?
I'm not gonna be on the podium. I know that, but I'm gonna have fun and I'm gonna feel good and I'm gonna prioritize my enjoyment of this thing. And part of that was also learning a little better life balance, which we'll see how that works this season. But yeah, just kind of enjoying where you are. Um,
Hmm.
you can always try harder and want more, but you still need to just enjoy where you are. And that's kind of what I've been missing for a couple years. So I was glad to kind of get that back. And yeah, same thing. Yeah, sometimes the start of the race is like, all right, we're going for it. And then you get in the middle and you're like, cool, I'm just going to hang out here and maintain this and enjoy this and take,
Yep.
really enjoy these laps. Like we've got a fun section coming up. We're going to have fun.
Yeah.
And then, all right, now I'm going to like get back into it. Like, whatever. It's like a roller coaster, but yeah, I mean,
Right, right. I talk to it both in like this conversation and sort of conversations I've had more introspectively and with other women that are sort of, like I said earlier, in sort of this broad wellness, health, wellness, performance, healthcare space. And I feel like a common thread um, between all of these conversations I've been having so far, and I feel like will continue on, is sort of this shift in perspective. And actually, I heard this for the first time through one of my bosses, Dr. Jeff Williamson. He's a gerontologist at Wake, and he's also the director of the center that I work at. And his perspective, I've just sort of like applied in all these other areas, which is that, we want to help people do what they love to do for as long as they possibly can. We want to them to take full advantage um of this life that we get. Um, you know, hopefully pain-free, hopefully, not nursing any injuries, hopefully not having to deal with, all those things. Like if, Dr. Williamson said, if I can get someone to enjoy, because he deals with patients 65 and up, if I can get a patient another 5 years of like a whole happy, healthy life with their family, with their friends, and doing what they really love, then I succeeded. And I was like, that's a really lovely way of thinking about all of this, which is like, I love to compete. You love to compete. We love to like push ourselves to the limits. But I think at the end of the day, as long as if we're doing what we love to do and we're happy and we're healthy and we're with friends, and it's a game of longevity,
yeah,
not
I no, I
necessarily.
love that. I love that like perspective too, because it's good to just throw everything in there. It's like, cool,
Right,
see what
right,
comes. Everything's in this.
right. And I mean, and it um, I kind of humbled myself in a sort of way, because I was, one year I was like really training hard and really training hard. And then the next year, again, life happens, things change, things pull you in different directions. And I wasn't quite having the experience that I had the year before. And then I sort of had this like wellness check, this like pause that was just like, you are healthy and you get to ride your bike and you get to go hang out with your friends, that's like everything. And that's not to say that competing isn't like a friggin' blast and the highs and lows that you ride in that aren't like amazing. But that's not, I'm not going to be like, trying to like rip a cyclocross course when I'm like 85 years old. Maybe I will be, who knows? But
Hey, maybe we see. I mean, that's kind of one of the really cool things in a way of some of the national championships that I get to be at. We have these people out there who are, I mean, they're in their 70s and they're in their 80s and they're riding bikes. They may not be very fast, but the fact that they're still riding bikes at that age and showing up and towing the start line,
yeah,
I mean, that is humbling to me to see because I'm like, once again, like going back to how can I do this sustainably? You know,
yes,
and yeah,
yes,
I want to be doing that when I'm 85. I mean, I may be the only one out there, but I'm still out there, which is a lot better than a lot of people. And if I'm able to still do that, then I mean, that's awesome.
yeah,
So
right. Yeah. And to kind of like shift your perhaps perhaps your focus from I want to perform the best I ever have before this age. It's like, okay, but we can do that. And and let's also focus on being able to do this sustainably. I like the word that you used, for as long as we possibly can. Because I would hand over fist take, another 40, 50 years of healthy, you know, joints in my body, being able to get on a bike and do that rather than maybe another few years of like optimal performance. Like I would rather be able to move freely for much longer than,
absolutely,
yeah.
yeah. Well, and too, I mean, kind of going back to that sustainability thing, I kind of had that realization for myself. Either I could put everything into competing and doing what I know I can do in that field and miss out on a lot of things that I really love, like the behind the scenes. I mean, building a race course,
Hmm.
taking pictures, facilitating a really hopefully fun environment for people. Not be able to do that at all and just focus on myself and race and probably race really, really well, but miss out on all of that. And that just wasn't something that I wanted to do. And so that was kind of that reckoning too. Like, okay, both of these things matter a lot.
Hmm.
So I can do them both, but I just have to temper this expectation for this more selfish desire of mine. It's still very fulfilling, but I get to do this, which is much more fulfilling than this will ever be because this is kind of that, yeah, it's that community, it's that experience, it's building that energy in a way
Yeah.
that
And
you get to share with people. I mean, it's like that it's just so much better. Like I can go and if I want a bike race, like that'd be great. I've won bike races. I love it. It's fantastic. But like, I don't know, the fact of seeing, 300 people out at the local race and
mhm.
enjoying it, plus all the spectators and knowing that everybody is enjoying this thing and coming together, like that is just so satisfying. So that's
Yeah, the word
sustainable.
that
It's also finding that balance of what are your priorities?
mhm. The word that comes to my mind while you were talking is like is legacy. I mean, you're building a legacy. That's what's going to last beyond, unless you're just an absolute monster like, Sonic Hunt and like all these other
No,
insane rate. You know what I mean? Chances are, you know, racing and competing is more of like an intrinsic thing, whereas the building the courses and making sure that racing happens for other people so they get to enjoy it is extrinsic. It's what's going to last on and hopefully last on for generations because I see so many parents or even like collegiate age down through high school or parents with you know young children introducing them to cycling and like that's the good stuff right there being like I love to race but I love it to see new people discovering the sport and kind of that moment in their eyes when they're like this is amazing and I'm like welcome. Like you,
Exactly.
we welcome you. We invite you. Please join us. It's a good
Yes, it
time.
is. And it's great.
Yeah. Well, just a few more moments here. I want to do a couple Q&A questions and then we have a rapid fire.
Yeah.
So, for our first kind of question in the Q&A, someone asks, how does someone get into cycling that doesn't know all that much about the sport?
Yeah. So, this is also one of the things that makes me super excited.
I
I
figured.
love helping people get into the sport. Um, so whether it's coaching, because I coach with our NICA team, I, you know, have taught several friends kind of different skill progressions. Like that's exciting too. Um, and once again, like I had those people for me who, took me out on bike rides and taught me how to do things and taught me road etiquette. And,
Mhm,
especially, there were a couple women that kind of did that specifically, which I think as a woman in sport, one, I'm very grateful for the male friends that have supported me and provided lots of opportunities. But to have like that mentorship from a woman is a very validating
yeah.
and helpful in a lot of ways. So I would say, I mean, one, if you know somebody who rides, don't be afraid to ask them to either ride with you or, I mean, even if it's like, yeah, don't be ashamed, don't be embarrassed, and just do it. Because I don't know how many times I've heard somebody say, "Oh, well, you wouldn't want to ride with me because I'm slow," and I'm like, y'all should see me on most of my rides. Like, I'm just like,
Yeah. Yeah, and they're probably like you and me, where we're like, thank you for asking about bikes. I would love to talk about
yeah,
bikes. No one asks me about bikes.
I know. So, but yeah, so if there's someone you know who rides, ask them. I mean, that's the number one. Ask them because chances are they're gonna be excited and they're gonna love to ride with you. It doesn't matter how fast you think they are or how slow you feel like you are or whatever it is. Like find that person because that may be the person. That may be your buddy. Because sometimes, especially if you want to get into racing, it's nice to have a buddy. Um,
Mhm.
and then two, I mean, you can reach out to me. You can reach out to Nina. Absolutely.
You can, audience, you
I
can.
know. Depending on where you are, but like that's once again, like either it's making introductions to other people who can be those resources or can find those things. And then third, I mean, look for local bike clubs. Just because it's a club doesn't mean that they're all racy. I'd say most people don't race their bikes. So even if
Mhm,
you just want to get into cycling in general, that's going to be a great place because you're going to have a wide range of people um, who may know, they may have resources, they may have different rides, they may have skill opportunities and stuff like that. And once again, it's a great place to just meet people and kind of make those connections and find those people who have the same bike interests that you do. Because once again, bikes are for everybody. There's a whole range. I mean, there's a whole range of cycling that I'm not even a part of that I think is really, really
mhm.
cool. But I mean, like alley cats and single speed fixies around the city, like that's not my haven't done it. Not gonna say never.
Right.
Haven't had the opportunity, but like there are every type of cycling out there. So try to find those people. Look around on Facebook and Facebook groups, and that's
Mhm,
a good way to do it. And then yeah, I mean, if there are local races that you think are really cool, find that race promoter, ask them because they'll know who to plug you in with and who can kind of answer those questions and be a part of it.
yep, yeah.
Ride your
I
bike.
know.
Just ride bikes.
Mhm, yeah,
Find the
just
greenway, find your local trails. I mean, ask for recommendations and just ride your bike.
yeah, just being out there and do it. I can't tell you how many times I've just been out and I've bumped into someone also riding a bike, or, riding to and from my house. You know, a lovely gentleman that lives, a few houses down. He's like, I always see you riding. He's like, I ride too. And we started talking about it. It's like, oh, and I was just riding. I was just out there enjoying cycling, and you bump into those people naturally because they're going to be doing what they love to do and you're doing what you love to do. Those worlds will collide. at some
Oh,
point.
and then when you're doing those activities, I mean, everybody is like good endorphins. It's all
Mm-hmm.
flowing, and it just makes it
Yes.
everybody's excited. You
Yep.
can tell.
Bikes are the best. Okay, second question, and I'm gonna kind of fill in a little bit around it, but they asked, riding on the road can be particularly intimidating.
Yep,
It can also be really dangerous
yep.
if you're not careful. Do you have sort of like, it doesn't have to be a particular number, but do you sort of have like your top tier safety tips for someone who wants to, whether they're going out, on a training ride or they're commuting, they're biking on the road. What
Yeah,
would be your top safety tips?
yeah. So I know depending on where you are affects it a lot.
Mhm.
So I'm coming from being in Hendersonville, North Carolina, where it's really yes, there are some aggressive drivers, but it's not like being in a bigger metropolitan area, um,
Right.
for sure. So, I am coming from that. But given that I do ride on the road a lot, it's probably the thing that I ride the most just because it's the most convenient, and I do feel pretty safe and comfortable doing it. So that said, my top tips for that, I mean, always wear a helmet. Clearly,
Mhm.
just just have to say that one. Um, and this one was thanks to my husband. I resisted it for a long time. But I have front and rear lights on my road bike. I'll swap them over to my gravel bike if I'm going to be on roads doing gravel. Um, but those are pretty much always on my bike and always on. So I've just got a white blinky light on the front and a red blinky light on the back.
Yep.
And make sure that they've got enough battery life for what I'm doing. Especially the rear one. The front one sometimes I'll let die, but the rear one is the one especially that I pay
Yes.
much attention to. So definitely do that. Um, I do notice a difference in vehicles when they recognize and see me when I have those lights on,
Hmm.
for sure. And then for the other one, I mean, I love me an all black ensemble. Um, you know,
Yeah, you and me both.
yeah. And it is really tempting to get a lot of the dark colors, and there's some really great kit designs and stuff out there.
Mhm.
But that's one thing that I've tried to do a little more of is just get a little more brightness in my cycling attire, whether it's my vest or my helmet, or my socks, just a little something extra that's, got at least some bit of bright color to it just to kind of increase that visibility.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is I always try to behave like a car when I'm on my bike. So if I'm coming up to a four-way stop, I'm not going to run the stop. I'm going to take my turn. I'm going to behave like a car. Sometimes it gets difficult when motorists are like, "Oh, go ahead, go ahead." I'm like, "Okay, but you're messing everything up."
Yeah. You have a plan.
Uh, but that's something that I'm really mindful of doing. No, I don't stop at every single stop sign completely, but especially if there are other vehicles around, I do stop and make it very obvious that I am following the rules of the road. And then the other thing is when I am riding, I'm very careful with where I am on the road. I'm not usually right on the white line. I am over left of it by at least a foot, if not more,
Mhm.
depending on the road conditions. So, I do see a lot of people when they are just hugging that white line. They're going really slow, they're really scared. And I mean, you can tell, and you know, they're not helping themselves out, but kind of push yourself out and makes yourself more visible. It makes other vehicles have to think about you a little more before they whip around and try to pass you.
Yeah.
And same thing, if you're riding around a corner, around a curve, then I'll push myself even further out more towards the center of the lane so that, a car can see me and they have to think longer about passing, especially on a curve where they should not be passing, but it happens. Um,
Mhm.
but they have to think about it more. They have to go further out, and that usually slows them down about it.
Yeah.
And then I think I do like if I have a clear line of sight down the road, I'll maybe motion the car on that's behind me if they want to pass. Then I will get closer to the white line if they are passing me just to get a little more space. sometimes I'll slow down a little bit. I'm not always like pedaling as fast as I can. So
Yeah.
part of it's just being a cooperative road user, uh,
Hmm.
while also being super, super defensive and just alert all the time.
I'm so glad that you said being defensive, because I was gonna kind of dogpile onto what you said and say that my sort of mindset when I'm out there is I assume that none of these cars see me. Like I'm just
Absolutely.
gonna go ahead and assume that you do not see me right now. So that's not how I'm gonna behave because the times when I'm like, they see me, they see I that's when accidents happen. So
Yep.
always
That's when I just pull out right in front of you and you're like, cool, thanks.
right, right. Because there are times when I'm like, there is absolutely no way that person does not see me. You will be amazed, people. You spend enough time out there on the roads and some wacky things happen to you. So that's always, I always tell people, in addition, you hit the nail on the head with those tips. I always tell people, like, just assume that they don't see you.
Yeah.
Always err on the side of caution. Um, you know, and I don't recommend flipping people birds, but
No.
sometimes you gotta flip the old bird.
Yeah, every now and then I get a little peeved with someone's decision, but
I'm probably a little bit more aggro than you are, but
probably, probably. But it's yeah,
it's the New
and
Yorker in me. Look where you
maybe,
going.
right? Yeah, and I'm like, it's the South, bless your heart, you've made
Yeah,
mistakes, fine. Uh,
yeah.
and two, I mean, like there are some roads that I don't ride or I don't ride by myself.
Yes.
So that also is like, when you know your community, you know where you probably don't want to be. I know,
Yeah.
sometimes you have to go there, um, but I also, yeah, there's some places that I don't want to ride on the road, or
And
I really don't want to do it by myself. So I'm gonna do that with, make sure I have company or at least two or three of us, just to kind of be a bigger group together.
right. And kind of like the response to your first question, which is, when you kind of fold yourself in with those people that are maybe a little bit more experienced or more familiar with the area, usually you can ask them, hey, I'm going to go out for this ride. I'm going to take this road. Usually you can get a temperature gauge on, people say like, probably best to avoid that road given my experience. I tell people all the time, I'm like, it's not always bad, 365, but as someone who also lives in the mountains, I lived in the mountains. You'll be surprised how many locals will tell you, do not ride the parkway. Do not,
Oh,
don't do it. I know you want to do it. We all wish we could do it. Don't do it.
yeah, no, I won't ride the parkway on the weekends and
Mm-mm.
or in the summer. Sometimes in the winter if it closes, it'll be great. Or
Yeah,
early spring, on a weekday, every now and then for a little jaunt up to Mount Mitchell. It's
right.
not a jaunt. I haven't done that in a while, but just to make clear.
A jaunt, you know. But yeah. Okay, great. Well, we're gonna jump into the rapid fire. So just think on don't think about it too much. Just the first one that pops into your mind. We've got one, two, three. We've only got five here.
Okay.
And then we'll wrap this baby up. So, okay, first one. Hardtail or full squish?
Well, I ride full squish right now, but my first love is my hardtail because that's where I really fell in love with mountain biking, and I still kind of miss it. So maybe
Yeah,
hardtail.
hardtail. Aluminum or carbon?
Oh, aluminum, 100%. I love my carbon bikes, but my aluminum ones work just as fine. And
Mhm.
yeah,
Go aluminum. It's the
yeah,
best.
yeah.
Um, cross a road.
Well, oh, see, okay.
I know it depends on what perspective you're taking here.
Right, because if we're racing, 100% cross. If we're riding, it's gonna be road just because I would not ride nearly as much if I didn't ride on the road.
Right, right.
So this is sorry, I'm choosing both answers in pretty much every
It's
one.
okay. It's okay. Um, okay, so then this next question won't be any easier then. Road or mountain?
Mountain, because that's when I'll go out on the mountain bike and that's when I have like those like euphoric experiences every now
Yeah.
and then because you just got nature around you, and that's kind of where I started. And you know, one, you don't have to think about cars. I always find it, not always, but usually when I go out and mountain bike again, it's such a
Yeah.
reaffirming experience that bikes are great.
Yeah. That they're fun, you know? Um, clip in or flat pedals?
Oh, clip in,
I
everything,
agree. I
everything.
agree. I
Yeah.
agree. Did you tangent, did you have that classic first experience or maybe second or third experience when your brain is like you're learning to clip in for the first time and then you do that really awkward like fall wobble?
Yep, yep. Had a couple of those. One of the most memorable ones was when I was just learning on the mountain bike because I started mountain biking before road biking. And we were riding a trail in Mint Creek, and I kind of fell, couldn't get unclipped, fell with the bike off the trail, kind of down the trail, and kind of what I describe, if you imagine like an upside down turtle trying to get unclipped and out.
Yeah.
Did that for a while. Um, and it took me so long to extract myself, get back up, and then get down the trail that my husband thought I had died.
Oh my goodness.
Was super worried, which was very sweet. And so we went home after that.
Yeah. You're
but
like, we're going home.
But that does remind me of, and I don't think I wrecked when I learned how to do it on the road bike because I'd been doing it quite a bit by that time. By the time
Mhm.
I finally got a road bike and road pedals. But that does remind me. So if you are learning to ride clipped in, especially like on a mountain bike with the SPD pedals or Shimano pedal, there is a cleat that you can get that's multi-release, and it makes it getting unclipped so much easier. And if you're learning, it's life changing because I found out about those a little while into learning how to ride clipped in, and I got them, and it was amazing. And now I just use the regular ones, but they don't usually have them on the shelves, and we have to special order it from the shop.
Right.
But they exist, and if you're a
I did
beginner,
not know that.
nobody knows this. I don't know why, but that is something. Um, when I also side hustled at our local bike shop, because once again, doing all the things that I love, even on
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
was something I would recommend to new people when they would get bikes or get looking at pedals. Like that was something that I learned, and everybody needs to know it.
I know. It's truly once you know and your brain is just like I just clip in, I clip out, and it's the best. It's the best. I cannot wait to teach my boyfriend Max. He's been so far, so far his experience is mainly BMX. So he's really just been a flat pedal guy
Yeah,
and he's like, but you clip in on your mountain bike? And I'm like, yes, I will
then
show you the way. It's
get him the multi-release clips, and his mind will be blown. One, because he can be clipped in, and he can also exit the pedal real quick.
right. But I do think it's actually hilarious. I tell people they're like, "Well, what if you fall over? What if?" I'm like, "Well, okay. So they're designed so that if you fall over, you should unrelease from them automatically. Unfortunately, that has not been my experience. I've always stayed attached to the bike
Yeah,
somehow,
not
but
always.
but hey, listen, it's how it goes, and everybody experiences it. And
Yep.
if you don't, like, I have not met a single cycling person who's clipped in. It's like, no, I mean, I just clipped in and I went, and everything's been fine. And I'd be like, you scare me.
You're, you're lying.
You're lying to
That's
my face. Well, Laura, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for this wonderful conversation. I learned so many things about you that I did not know. Hopefully, folks that watch this learned a little bit more about cycling, of course, what you do and kind of your path, but cycling and sort of some tips and things that they can take away. Um, they can find you, Laura, on the World Wide Web,
absolutely.
on the
Um,
internet.
I'm on the internet. Yeah, I'm on Instagram. Laura Roars, Roars, not Roar, but Roar. Um, so I'm on Instagram, on Facebook. Apparently, I'm fairly easy to find. So
Yes.
feel free to reach
Yeah,
out.
if anybody has any questions, reach out to you. But yeah, thank you so much for your time tonight, and appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. I am going to stop recording.